This is how I've cleaned pallet wood for the past 3 years. It's extremely dirty, it's extremely dusty, and it's pretty dangerous wearing gloves. Today, that all changes. Introducing the all-new stainless steel wire wheel that fits Porter Cable's Restorer as well as the soon-to-be-released Black & Decker Restorer model. This wire wheel weighs in at 1.5 pounds. Robert Cundall Jr., the inventor of the Restorer, has chosen a higher quality stainless steel that won't rust and that is a lot more affordable than other brands. Let's do a comparison of the Makita corded brush sander versus the Restorer. The Makita averages about $500 and the wire wheel costs about $149 on sale. The Restorer seems to be a better deal at $99 and I've even seen it go on sale at Lowe's for $69. The price of the new Restorer wire wheel, $50. Just like the rollers, the Phillips end looking of this brush goes on first. A quick wiggle until it seats properly, and all that's left is to lock the latches. Next, let's do some testing. I wanted to do a test of the most stubborn and hardest materials to remove that I could find in my shop. I put multiple layers of automotive paint, stains, spray paint on plywood. I covered plywood in water putty and Bondo. I also collected different types of softwoods and hardwoods to see what it would do. Now up front, I believe I may have mistaken the wire wheel as an aggressive, overly abrasive type of wheel. Instead, it's not. It's more like a medium sandpaper, sometimes with buffer qualities and stellar cleaning qualities, like you'll soon see. Now that's not to say that my wire wheel can't handle these tests. I'm just saying that I kind of painted on the paint in Bondo so thick, I thought I was making it bulletproof. I found on the max setting the wire wheel never bogged down and was able to give me plenty of power. I really painted all of these on pretty thick. But I gave each one about 60 seconds of sanding before showing the results. To save time, let's fast forward to the end of each test and we can see what they look like. The wire wheel did its best at removing 2 layers of automotive paint, but I found it left the surface super smooth and polished. I noticed the wire wheel did an even better job of removing the stain. I found it gave a look of a really old worn board, yet it was smooth and slick, nothing like you could do with sandpaper. It was so neat, I wanted to go back to the black to see if it would come off more. The spray paint had about the same results as the stain. It didn't seem to be as hard to lighten as the black automotive paint. In the end, I really liked the look of the stain with the wire wheel. This was one of my favorites during all of my testing. Next up is Durham's water putty. Now I find this stuff to be more brittle and can crumble if you sit there and pick at it, but in the same sense it's pretty good at being solid hard material when it's all together like this. I found the wire wheel does a great job of removing thin layers and smooths this stuff really nicely. It was about this point that I started to realize that this wire wheel is more like a medium grit sandpaper and can never get clogged and virtually never gets worn out. When it came to the Bondo, I found it did a really nice job of smoothing out the surface. It had no issues smoothing the layers all the way down to the wood pretty quickly. I found that I had plugged some holes in the process and found the wire wheel did a nice job of leveling it. Next, I glued up some walnut boards to test. I found there was a bunch of hardened glue on the back that I had forgot to clean off. I decided to try the wire wheel to see what it would do. Again, a lot of these are thanks to me just trying stuff to see what happens. Overall, the right side of this board looks to be pretty glue free. Again, wiping the glue off the board to prevent all this is really the right answer. Next, I flipped the board over to the glue-free side and proceeded to wire brush it. Being walnut is a totally different type of grain than most woods, the board became a really glossy and waxy feel. It was really smooth to the touch, like it had been polished. On hardwoods like this oak as well as the walnut, I began to see a pattern. The woods become waxy and polished. It shines in the light. You can tell where I've brushed as it's a little darker in color. It feels way better to handle than raw, splintery wood. Now when it came to softwood like this pine 2x4, I found the wire wheel carve valleys in the wood and raise the grain up, something you're not able to do with sandpaper. Robert mentioned that this look is a highly desired one and a lot of people are interested in getting the wire wheel solely for this rustic effect. I like the look of the stain taken back off the wood, so next I stained all my woods, and then I removed them to see what kind of look I could get. If you're playing with a stained piece of pine, it won't take but a few seconds to remove enough stain to leave it rustic. I kept at it for a little longer to see how far it would go, and was able to take it back down to pretty white wood. Oak did pretty good overall. You could tell where it started to show the raised grain a little darker, but you could tell where the board had been lightened up by the wire wheel. Back to doing stuff that doesn't make sense. I tried a brick on my house. Bricks are not smooth when you first touch them, but this did an awesome job of making the brick buttery smooth, for whatever good that does you. Next on my list was steel. I found that if I don't clean off the rust on my metal before MIG welding, the weld will fail on me, but if I take a moment to clean off the metal, I'll have a weld I can't break apart. I found the stainless steel wire wheel did a really good job of cleaning off the surface rust with little effort or time. It took me down to a black metal underneath. I didn't get a chance to do a test weld, but I'm fairly certain I could weld on this metal. I grabbed an old log that had been dead for many years. The bark was mostly gone. I found this did an amazing job of cleaning this log up. I also noticed it threw a lot of dirt and dust, and I highly advise using a shop vac or a respirator when using the restorer. I pulled out a piece of barnwood and tried that out. It did a great job of cleaning up the wood and put off a ton of dust. Next, I dug in my toolbox for the dirtiest and rustiest tools I could find. I couldn't read what was on this wrench, but I figured it'll be a great test. Wow, was I right. I found the stainless steel wire wheel is amazing at cleaning tools. I've recovered a few pliers off the bottom of lakes in the past, and this happens to be one of them. I wanted to see what it could do to this pitted steel. Next up was an old screwdriver. I believe this was deck stain from when I was staining last fall. It didn't want to come off oddly enough, so it'll make for a great test. Let's recap what we've seen. The wire wheel isn't the best on two layers of automotive paint. It provides a very old and rustic finish when brushing stain that I enjoy. Spray paint seems to be about the consistency of removing the stain. All are given a slick polished feel. Removing wood glue off walnut did fairly well. The wire wheel won't clog and doesn't smear the glue when it gets hot. I would suggest wiping off the glue rather than going this route, but it's worth a try instead of gumming up your sandpaper. Oak never did more than give a super shiny, slick finish, but it's a finish that feels great on the hands. The pine 2x4 gave the most dramatic wood grain out of all the woods I tried. As I explained earlier, it made valleys and raised the grains into mountains. You can better see this in a close-up shot. The glue-free side of the walnut came out with a high gloss look. The wire wheel really lays down the wood fibers, giving it a very slick feel. You can tell the difference under my finger on this barnwood where I didn't go. The barnwood is very dirty and the wire wheel does an amazing job of cleaning the surface, but leaving it looking old. Sandpaper does a great job of taking off the gray, but it leaves it looking like a new board. This does an excellent job of cleaning and polishing, but keeping the rustic look. With the vacuum attached, this combination of wire wheel and Porter Cable Restore are truly something I'm glad to have in my shop. If you're interested in purchasing the stainless steel wire wheel, Amazon and Lowe's will both carry it. I'll drop a link in the description below of where you can purchase it. Also, if you're interested in a Porter Cable Restore, Amazon and Lowe's both sell those as well. To learn more about the Porter Cable Restore, I'll leave a link in the description to the video review I did on the Restore.